Awesome. So welcome to the first Inner You podcast, episode 1. This is like an introductory episode, and this is our guest, Henry.
G'day.
He's the acupuncture who works with me closely, and we're going to delve into a little bit of your passion, your history, and we're going to get a little bit personal here today.
That's cool.
Cool.
Yeah, cool. Can't
Okay.
get,
So maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself today.
Oh, okay. Well, I was born in Taiwan, so that's pretty much Chinese culturally, and I came to Australia when I was about 3 or 4, grew up, and in the beginning, I had no idea that I was going to be doing Chinese medicine at all, even despite the fact that I grew up with a lot of Chinese herbs. I think a lot of Asian kids, you can identify with that, being forced to drink these really bitter herbal concoctions whenever they were sick or something like that. But straight after high school, I went straight into Chinese medicine. At the time, I wasn't even sure if I really liked it. It was just one of those things that a lot of kids, they go straight into something just to be into something. But then after a couple of months, it kind of really grew on me, especially, and there was this one incident that happened to me. And I really wish it was a lot more exciting than this, but I broke my leg by slipping. You could say I broke my leg by walking. It wasn't skiing or bungee jumping or anything exciting like that. I wish. No, I slipped at work and I broke my leg, fractured my fibula. For those of you who don't know, that's the little bone besides your big bone on your leg, just below your knee there. It was a spiral fracture, so it's sort of like the bone had kind of twisted around, so there was a spiral fracture there. Now, the doctors wanted to put a metal plate on me, but at the time I was 18 years old, so we had...
what kind of work were you doing then?
Oh, I was working in a supermarket.
Okay.
So, so it was a combination of the wet floor, wet shoes, the floor being smooth as hell, and I slipped and skidded and twisted, sprained my ankle as well as twisting my fibula basically. Now, the doctors wanted to put a plate over that, but at the time, my parents and I thought that was a little bit extreme, especially for someone who was as young as 18. So we got a second opinion, and around that time, I started to go back to Taiwan because I was originally going to go back to Taiwan anyway to brush up on my Chinese herbal medicine, my herbs. Little side note, my family actually has a Chinese herbal medicine clinic in Hensun, in the south of Taiwan.
Yep.
So I was supposed to go there anyway to broaden my herbal knowledge, so to speak. So I ended up going to Taiwan. I'm walking around on my crutches and everything, mixing herbs as much as I can, and also drinking these herbs for the leg as well too.
Yep.
All right, so I got to see firsthand the healing process of Chinese herbs when it comes to bone healing, and also when the cast came off, it wasn't even a cast at all. It was more like a back slap, which is just back in those days you'd have half a cast and it'd be wrapped around in bandages or so. But after about a couple of weeks or so, the cast came off, and as part of my recuperation, I got acupuncture as well too. And for me, even though it was ironic that I was studying acupuncture my first year, but I hadn't really experienced the full effects of therapy of acupuncture, barring those first few classes of acupuncture where we're needling each other, and it's a very painful class when you're needling each other, of course. But
I can imagine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We got to know each other very intimately after that. I'm sure to know. But after Taiwan, after the acupuncture, after the herbs, I got to see the effects that acupuncture had on my recuperation afterwards, because your muscles, your tendons, they're not going to be the same. You're going to have a little bit of weakness.
Yes.
Not as much blood circulation there because it's been immobilized for 4 to 6 weeks or so. So afterwards, the acupuncture helped helped me regain a lot of my strength, a lot of my full function, range of motion. And so from then on, you could say I sort of found my calling after that point. Chinese herbs, and having been both the patient and now the practitioner, I feel so I've come full cycle.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Now, what's interesting to me is that if you didn't have that incident of the broken bone, were you still going to get into acupuncture anyway because of your family's background?
Yeah, absolutely. And and the way I see it is that something like that would have probably happened anyway, because we as human beings, things are inevitably going to break down, and whether it was the acupuncture for my leg, or a herbal decoction that I would have given to myself or given to someone else, I would have been exposed to the effects of Chinese medicine anyway.
Yes.
So it was going to happen sooner or later, I reckon.
Yes. Okay, that's really interesting. Now, tell us a bit more about the history of Chinese medicine itself. So
Chinese, it's actually very interesting, because the history of Chinese medicine is basically the history of China itself, because it's Chinese medicine the way we understand here in the West. It's pretty much a philosophy based on Taoism, and you could say, how did they come up with it? Well, I think you have to go back in time to the Neolithic period, where a lot of the ancient Neolithic Homo sapien Chinese back then, they probably interpreted a lot of illnesses coming from evil spirits, and so on and so forth. And that's the reason why in a lot of the older texts you'll have certain points that are pretty much exorcism. These points are here to exorcise evil spirits. Okay. Yes, and which in this day and age, of course, I'm not going to go around as an exorcist or anything like that. But these days, we would use those points to treat a lot of psycho-emotional disorders.
Yep, psycho-emotional disorders.
Yes, absolutely. So a lot of psychological disorders, a lot of insomnia, a lot of major anxiety, depression. Those are the points that we use there. But getting back to the question, how did it develop? You could say it's an evolution of both philosophy and a lot of trial and error, because when people think Chinese medicine, they think, oh, it's all very airy-fairy mysticism, or this or that. Well, yes and no at the same time. I think of it more as the natural sciences. A lot of the ancient Chinese doctors, they would do the tried and tested method of trying a herb, trying a root, seeing the effects of it on the body, and recording it down. And the accumulation of that recorded experience would eventually later on evolve into the Chinese medicine that we practice today. And you could say that because China's a big country, not all the Chinese medicine that you see in one part is going to be exactly the same there. What we know of Chinese medicine today is basically an amalgamation by the Chinese government to simplify things, to streamline everything there. So we're not really going to be talking about evil spirits and this and that, which they may be talking about in the 1800s or so. These days, we're looking more from, say, the school of thought of the 5 phases, say, earth, wind, wood, fire, the etc. Those 5 Chinese elements that also correspond to an ancient Chinese philosophy called Taoism. And traditional Chinese science is basically Taoism, because it's a lot about it's how the ancient Chinese understood the world. Basically, you could say the closest comparable thing for the West would be the ancient Greeks and their perception of the world from the 4 humours. When looking at the human body, and you can compare that to we in Chinese medicine looking at the 5 phases, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
Yeah.
From what I understand is that it used to be different forms or versions of it in different parts of China before, and then I guess throughout the world as well, as different people learned it. And just lately, probably was it in the 80s that they started to do
probably around the 50s or so, because around the 50s, that would have been, say, after the end of the Chinese Civil War, and even before that, from the 20s or so, when you have a lot of Chinese scientists or doctors who were educated in the West, and they would come back and they would either try to combine the both of them, and find some sort of common ground between the two of them. And I think from the 50s onwards, this is when Chinese medicine became a lot more standardized now, in order to bring it into the 21st century, because it's the reason why your standard Chinese doctor in China itself, or even in Taiwan or Hong Kong, they will look at the body not just from a biomedical point of view, but also from a Chinese medicine point of view. So the closest comparison that I can think of it is, imagine if you had a Han Dynasty physician from Han Dynasty, so we're talking 200 AD or so, being transported here into the 21st century, and that Han Dynasty dynasty physician is given access to modern technology, modern science, so he knows all about biochemistry or physiology, genetics, and all this and that, and he's combining those two so that he coheres with both his worldview and also the newfound worldview of modern science.
Yes. Okay. Now, this is a little bit off track. I'm just curious as to your thoughts on this.
Yeah.
Would you ever pass this profession down to your kids in the future?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not even because, it's not even if they wanted to follow my footsteps or become Chinese medicine practitioners. It's something that's good to know because it's a part of history. When you're learning all the Chinese herbs, they're pretty much the same herbs that they would have been used back in the Han Dynasty, the Tang Dynasty, so on and so forth. You, of course, over the period, you would have inclusion of new herbs that they didn't have at the time. For example, goji berries. Back then, they became a lot more common in the Tang Dynasty because they were imported from Persia. And it's funny because we call it goqizi, which is goji berries as we know, and that became a lot more common in a lot of the formulas after that time period. So it's Chinese medicine isn't a static thing; it changes themselves with the times, and a lot of incoming herbs that are incorporated into a lot of future practices. It is it is something that I don't think I'll even recognize in the future afterwards anyway, any more than, say, that particular Han Dynasty physician would recognize Chinese medicine today.
Yes, okay,
Yeah.
yep. Now, something interesting. How would you explain the relevance of acupuncture or Chinese medicine to the average person today? So, like, when I say average, by no means I mean in capabilities, but someone with a 9-to-5 job, how is it relevant to them?
Well, I think of it as basically maintenance of health. A lot of the traditional Chinese medicine MO, the modus operandi of a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner, is to preserve health. We're all going to die. All of our organs are all going to fail. Entropy is a fact of life. It's written into a law of thermodynamics. What we're trying to do is we're trying to preserve it so we can delay the inevitable. We're trying to preserve as much of your you could say bodily cohesion as much as possible before entropy inevitably happens and we all fail and we all decay.
Yep.
So I would consider relevant to the modern day in maintaining a balance between your yin and yang and just trying to lead a healthy lifestyle in moderation.
Yep.
That would probably be the most relevant way that I would attribute it to modern day 9-to-5 living.
Yep. Okay. If I was a person who's aged 30 years old and I eat pretty well, I go to the gym 5 to 6 times a week. I get medical checkups 4 times a year, and I wanted to see what acupuncture can do for me. What can it do for me?
Well, first of all, maintenance of health. You'll find that a lot of people in this day and age, their sleep cycles are affected because of work stresses, anxiety and whatnot. And acupuncture is great for depression, anxiety, and just sleep disorders and emotional things emotional imbalances, you could say.
Yep.
So if I was seeing a patient like that, I would focus on the sleep first of all and go from there, because if you're not sleeping well, your body's not initiating its own cell repair mechanisms.
Yep.
That's when your body does most of its healing anyway.
Yes.
So sleep would probably be my first point of call.
Yeah, makes sense. Yep, definitely a big thing. What I notice with clients myself is that with sleep, a lot of times, especially people who are like athletes, weekend warriors,
absolutely,
they heal better with better sleep. Cortisol levels also do much better with proper sleep. So, as you know, we always talk a lot about the pillows, but that's all very physical.
Yeah,
we deal with all the physical biomechanics and stuff like that.
Yeah.
From your point of view, how has acupuncture improved the quality of sleep of someone?
quality of sleep for someone, from a Chinese medicine point of view, I would be rebalancing the imbalances between the yin and yang. From a biomedical point of view, what acupuncture does is the insertion of needles at certain points. Now, from a biomedical point of view, nothing should really technically happen, but something does happen in the body. And according to studies that they've done, what actually happens in the body is the insertion of these needles at these particular points sends a signal to your brain, and your brain releases a lot of neurohormones. And the closest analogy that I can think of it is, say, you rebooting your computer. So it's rebooting that sort of connection there. So any sort of neural pathways that are being basically going through a pathological route, you could say, is being diverted and basically realigned.
Yep. Okay. Now, I just want to bring attention to a bit about the word qi as well.
Okay.
I know that it can be a bit vague in terms of usage sometimes, but I also know that there have been studies. Correct me if I'm wrong. There have been some studies done that look at separate channels. So not the nerves, but not the circulatory system as well.
Yeah.
But a channel that deals with possibly qi flow, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
If you can share with us maybe a bit of the research that you know versus...
Well, a lot of the acupuncture points that they've done, they've noticed that those areas of the body tend to have a lot of low electrical resistance. So it means that basically electricity would probably conduct a lot better along that route. Qi, by my definition, the way it's translated from Chinese to English, just means energy of a different sort. But qi in this sense is, from a biomedical point of view, the way I would interpret it is vibrational, atoms vibrating, i.e. heat. So a state of very, very little heat, almost basically death, is when your atoms aren't vibrating anymore. Yep. So qi is basically, the closest thing I can do is vibrational energy, heat. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you say that as an acupuncturist or a Chinese medicine practitioner, would you say that you treat conditions, or would you say that you don't actually treat the body, but you look more towards, like you said, balancing the body so that it can do what it has to do?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Every single patient that I see, I always go by the sole goal of basically balancing the yin and yang. Whether and by the yin and yang, it can be night and day, qi and blood, your vital bodily fluids and matter, fluid. It's about trying to correct the imbalances that have caused these illnesses. So my focus wouldn't so much be the disease itself, it would be the person itself.
Yep.
So it's a reason why when someone comes to me to treat one particular pathology, I'm not just treating that one particular thing, I'm also treating a whole lot of other different things that they've got going on.
Yep.
So they may notice other things like, my sleep's better along with the anxiety, or these points that you did for my lower back pain, they also affected certain other pathologies that they didn't know that they had.
Yep. Okay. One interesting thing the other day as well, I spoke to someone who said that she had, I think it was a kidney deficiency in blood deficiency. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does it make sense to you? Yeah.
Yeah.
What does it actually mean?
Well, it's that particular diagnosis. It's very patient specific. So a patient could be in the case of, say, blood deficiency. Of course, that could manifest in a lot of signs and symptoms such as anemia or incredibly dry eyes. Of course, sallow complexions and some cases of infertility as well too.
You do specialize in fertility.
Yes,
right?
yes, absolutely. So because it's a very holistic art. So one person from two people basically from a biomedical point of view would have the same condition. Let's say infertility, right? But from a Chinese medicine point of view, those two people aren't going to have the exact same cause of infertility. Therefore, our treatment principles for both patients would be different.
Right, okay. So you look at the causes.
That's right.
Yep.
One patient's cause of infertility could be because of, say, kidney deficiency, kidney qi deficiency. One's cause of the other patient's cause of infertility could be, say, too much liver heat, liver fire rising. So I would treat according to those lines there.
Okay, yep. Yeah. Now, if someone was wanting to know more about, like maybe read more about acupuncture, or just learn more about it, what's the best way to go? Are there any good websites you know?
Yeah, absolutely. You could, here in Australia at least, you can always go to the Australian Acupuncture and Chinese Medicine Association. They have a lot of great information for the public there. If you want to get straight into it, you could, and if you have a lot of time and patience, you could try reading the traditional Chinese, texts themselves. Say
the what? Sorry,
the actual the actual textbooks themselves by these traditional Chinese medicine practitioners.
We know that's not going to happen.
How good's your classical Chinese?
Okay.
Yeah, but it's a great way to not only further your understanding in Chinese medicine, but also, I feel from a personal level, your own personal development as well, because you're also studying philosophy as well.
Yep, sure. Okay.
Yeah.
And what's the best way to find a suitable practitioner for you as well?
Okay. So first things first, you want to make sure that your practitioner is registered. At least here in Australia, they were registered by APRA, the governing body. You want to make sure that that they're registered, that they have all the credentials. If you're in, say, America or Germany or wherever, they should have their own professional association. So you want to make sure that everything's above board with them, with their professional associations. And that's just that's just not just to protect yourself, but also the public as well too, and it also protects the profession as well too. Maintains a level of professionalism, and yeah. Basically, go with the person that you click the most with. After that,
okay. It's a very personal thing, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because this is a long-term thing. You're not just this is once again maintenance of health. So you want to make sure you get along with your practitioner for some time.
Yep. You want to get along with them to so they can understand you better as well.
Absolutely.
And then you're comfortable with them, and that way you get the best results as well.
Absolutely.
I know that from my personal experience with acupuncture, I know that it's helped me a lot with immune systems. My immune system. It's helped me a lot with my running as well. So whenever I've got calf tightness after a long run, it's really good for the healing process. I know that releases the muscles really, really well.
Yes, it's excellent for musculoskeletal.
Musculoskeletal, yeah, very, very good for that. But that's just my my experience. I know that the herbs they don't gel so well with me. I prefer the little tablets, but
yeah, it's the taste factor. It's incredibly bitter for a lot of it.
Have you found anyone who actually liked it before?
Actually, surprisingly, yes, and they tend to be. They actually tend to be elderly Australian couples who love it. Maybe it's because their pharmaceuticals themselves are already so bitter that they're so used to it.
Yeah, this is like candy for them.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. You can actually take some Chinese medicines with a lot of the standard Western pharmaceuticals. There are a few that you absolutely cannot take, but your practitioner should be able to know which ones those are, and that's also the reason why you should let your practitioner know what medications that you're on, and also what herbal supplements or vitamin supplements that you're on.
Okay.
Because that is going to affect your herbal therapy as well.
Oh, okay. Is it because they interact with
yes,
each
absolutely.
other?
They'll interact with each other.
Okay. Now, another thing as well. I know that cupping. So cupping to help with musculoskeletal stuff. In general, it is quite. It is fairly comfortable, I would say. I mean, you feel a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
What about people who are not comfortable with needles, for example?
Cupping would be a great way for people to become familiar with the channels and collaterals, the acupuncture lines across the body, because in cupping, we're actually activating those very same points there that you would otherwise do in acupuncture.
Yes.
Cupping is very, very good, not just for musculoskeletal, and you may have seen a lot of it during the last Olympics as well too. All those swimmers with those what looks like
I've seen those
tentacles on their backs.
I think
tentacle marks on their backs.
Had a few
Tentacle
tentacle marks.
But it's very good for colds and flus. I highly recommend it.
Okay, very good. What about needles? For people who might be a bit apprehensive about it.
Of course, this is one of those things where everyone who grew up being immunized as a kid grows up with an innate fear of needles, and that's understandable, absolutely understandable. However, what if I told you that the acupuncture needles that I use are so much finer? They're basically the width of your hair. If you were to pluck out your hair off the top of your head right now and look at the width of it, that's how thick you could say a lot of my needles are. Right. If it gets any thicker, that's because I'll probably be needling a point on your butt, and you have a fair amount of fat. I'm not saying you have a fat butt, but you have a fair amount of cushioning there not to be painful.
Yep, compared to the other parts of it. Okay,
that's right.
So there are versions of needles which are a little bit thicker.
Yeah, that's right.
But most of them are pretty.
Yes, you have different gauges of them, and you have to figure out which ones are right, because it's not gonna. You're not gonna have what we in Chinese medicine call the de qi. Basically, you're not going to feel the sensation of the qi arriving.
Right.
If I were to put, say, a very, very fine hair-like needle on, say, your thigh, especially if you're a big Maori athlete with massive thighs or something, right? Yep. You're not going to feel it. It may not even penetrate the skin. So I would have to use a slightly higher gauge in such circumstances.
Okay,
and of course, every patient's different. Everyone's build is also quite different as well, too.
Yep.
So that would be a great way to.
Okay. Yep. Oh. Yeah. Generally speaking, from your experience, do guys or ladies handle acupuncture better?
Again, this is a very personal thing. Everyone is surprisingly different. I haven't experienced it myself, but I have heard stories where little girls will happily, have acupuncture needles in there, and they'll run around playing with them on their scalp. We used to actually see it in back when I was in China at the time. We had a lot of kids with cerebral palsy, so we would do a lot of scalp acupuncture on them. So we would leave the needles in for about next 20-30 minutes, and they'd be around happily playing around with each other as much as you can in a hospital ward, that is, and then we take them out. But then I've personally heard stories where big footballer types have fainted after one little needle. So everyone's completely different.
Okay, interesting. Okay,
it's really very. I think it really very much is based on how they probably responded to their first childhood vaccinations.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That plays a big part in terms of how they look at the event.
Yeah. Okay, whether or not they're going to faint or not.
Yeah. Have you had anyone who was so comfortable with it that they actually enjoyed it so much?
Yeah. It is possible, because the acupuncture needles, you have to remember, it's not just then your skin. It's your brain, in response to the needle being there, is also releasing a lot of good, happy, feel-good hormones like dopamine, whatnot. So some people do get a bit of a high from that, you could say. Okay, so the reason why afterwards, after an acupuncture session, you feel slightly woozy, a little bit like that, and that's because of all the happy feel-good chemicals that your brain's been releasing in response to that. So a lot of people, you can get a little bit, you do tend to like it, so it becomes a bit habitual. So for a lot of my long-term recurring patients, it becomes a part and parcel of their maintenance routine. So they come because of it, and they like it because it helps them basically function, whether it be in corporate life or basically life in general.
Right, helps them function better.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for sharing today.
No worries.
We'll see what we want to talk about the next time. Maybe we'll jump into something a bit more specific, but lovely. I think this is a good introduction. Thanks for sharing.
Lovely. It's been a pleasure.
Been a pleasure. Yep. Been a pleasure listening to you and asking you questions as well. So maybe we can get some feedback as well as to what you guys want to hear for the next time. The purpose of this podcast is really to look into a bit of personal development, a little bit into a lifestyle that's healthy. So we're quite open to really talking about anything, or just asking questions about anyone. I'll probably get a personal trainer or
sounds great.
Someone next, and you can help me to.
No worries.
With them as well.
I'll probably behind the camera right there, holding a boom mic or something.
All All right. So thanks for listening, guys,
Nice.
and we'll catch you the next time.
Lovely. Don't forget to subscribe below, by the way.
Awesome.
Yeah.
See you guys.
Bye bye.